What I'm going to do now is share with you a process that I had created out in the oil and gas industry that ended up being a huge success. In fact, in just 1 year, saved over $4.2 million in workable hours. Also assisted in creating a healthier, more productive, more interactive safety culture. And the area of improvement that I noticed was the area where advisories were given. So out in the field, safety advisories of various types would be given every day. And some of them would be like this one we see here with the dehydration is actually a very common safety advisory. The advisory would be read out by the safety advisor or the supervisor, and it occurred on a daily basis. On average, it took about 15 minutes for an advisory to be given. And when I was out in the field and I was watching this, I noticed that the workers were not engaged in the process. As the advisories were being read, the general worker was distracted, staring at a cup of coffee or on his mobile device. They simply were not paying attention. And because of that, I started to look at a better way to do this. And one thing I noticed right off the bat is that safety is truly just marketing. And we can translate safety into anything. We can translate it into your company culture, your vision, your goal, whatever it is. It's marketing. You're just selling to your employees. So knowing that, I decided to look at who really has done a good job at marketing. I took the big three, Facebook, Apple, and Google, and I started to study what makes them so successful. And one of the big things that these companies have realized is that times have changed. Technology has changed us. From our youth, when television was first around, we started to learn differently. And that learning has accelerated because everything right now is on demand. We have a very short attention span, and our minds need to be greatly entertained to hold us. And from that, I discovered a theory called the pink cow theory. And it's actually very easy to understand. If you drive by a field of cows, you're not going to share that experience with anyone. It has really no marketing value whatsoever. But in that field of cows, if there's a pink one, then you're going to stop. You're probably going to take a picture of it. You're going to share it with all your friends, and you're going to talk to everybody that you meet about this pink cow. So the pink cow truly just symbolizes something new and different. And if you look at Google, they've done a fantastic job of this. Their search engine page changes on a daily basis. Every time you log into Google, you are experiencing a pink cow because the login page has changed. If we look at traditional marketing, the way a traditional marketing budget would look at is we have X amount of dollars and we need to hit 80% of the population. We need to hit the majority or the most amount of people with this advertising as possible. And this 20% was always left out. But now it's discovered that it's that 20% that we need. Because the 80% is just the general population. The 20% are the better than average and the extraordinary. And those better than average or extraordinary will do all the selling and marketing for you. There is actually a Japanese term called otaku, and it references people that have an obsessive interest. And we all know otakus. If we look at this generation, it is filled with people with a specific obsessive interest. And if we look at Apple products, that's a prime example of otakus. And actually, the iPad or the launch of the iPad shows you the power of otakus. The majority of the budget for the iPad was used to not advertise. So let me clarify. The majority of the money spent for marketing for the tablet was used to keep it a secret or to send out false flags or false ideas about what was happening. In fact, Apple did not even release the name of their product until very near the release date. And the reason why they wanted to do this is because they knew they had an otaku base. They had a group of people that were obsessively interested in their products, and by keeping it away, by teasing them with upcoming products, they knew that the otakus would be in a frenzy to acquire it. On April 3rd, 2010, the iPad was released, and on that day, it sold 300,000. 2 days later, April 5th, they've sold 1 million iPads. Why do we think there's such an astronomical jump in a few days? It's because that 300,000 that was originally sold, those were your otakus. Those are the ones that were willing to stand in line for days to get a product, but they truly didn't know what it was. But the moment those otakus got the iPad, they went and showed and told everybody else about the item that they had and the fact that they had to go and get one. The cool thing about an otaku is that they're not an employee, they're not receiving a wage, it is actually costing you no money for the level of advertising that they do. And even now, if we look at March 2016, 308 million iPads have been sold. And now there's multiple derivatives and copies of this product. The iPad was a great success with virtually no marketing. The only thing that was used was the otakus. The otakus sold the iPad for them. So now, knowing that there's these otakus, those people with obsessive interests, let's look at how we create them. And when I started looking at how to create otakus, I came up with what was called the rule of three. And it's actually very easy. So when you look at it in a safety standpoint, the first rule of three is that your safety meetings or your safety presentation should not go longer than 30 minutes. The industry average out there seems to be an hour, but an hour is far too long to have people seated for a safety presentation. And generally these safety presentations happen on a weekly or sometimes bi-weekly basis. So there's a lot of working hours delegated to these presentations, but they're not delivered properly. The 30-minute presentation, way to look at it, it's a TV show. We're conditioned for it. We've been raised on it. We know that we can sit and watch something for 30 minutes quite easily. Now the advisories, what we're going to talk about specifically here, those are your commercials. Those are things that you organize in such a fashion that they will be advertising your 30-minute safety meetings. And within that 30-second advisory, you need to find a 3-second hook. And what the 3-second hook would be is if we look at the Vikings on History Channel that was just shown, if you heard the music in the beginning by Fever Ray, right away you know that the Viking show's on. It instantly triggers your subconscious mind for all that other information that was given to you. McDonald's has their 3-second hook. We could listen to less than 3 seconds of a McDonald's jingle and we would instantly recall our favorite food at McDonald's. And even if we look at one of the biggest marketing machines out there of YouTube, they put an option on their YouTube page to skip an ad. And this was not done for you and I so that we could skip a commercial. What YouTube was realizing is that people were actually learning how to ignore the commercial and wait for the show that they were wanting to appear. We became actively ignoring the commercial. So what YouTube did, and it's a magnificent marketing ploy, is to give you the option to skip an ad after 5 seconds. So what that does is it makes you look at the screen, it makes you move your mouse over to the skip ad sign, and it makes your subconscious mind get that 3-second hook from that commercial. They went to 5 seconds just to have a safe buffer, but they knew that they only needed 3 seconds of your time for you to subconsciously recall the commercial message that they need you to know. When you're creating these advisories, there are some key points to follow. And the first one, it has to be specific to the group that you're delivering to. If your worksite has pipe fitters, scaffolders, and electricians, if you create a safety advisory that is electrical based and you deliver it over to the pipe fitters, that is not about them. They will not want to learn it. They will actively ignore you because the information is not valuable to them. The other thing you have to do when you create these advisories is create them in such a way that anyone can present. And when I mean anyone, it does not only have to be the safety advisor or the foreman. It can be anyone in the group has to be able to present these advisories. The other thing that we have to do is avoid our language. And a key example is the word intervention. And the word intervention in the safety industry is actually a really good word. It means that we're there to assist, to help, to educate, to mentor. But at the site that I was working at, we actually had a lot of incidents where guys would be torquing bolts with a wrench and the wrench was slipping off, and they were striking themselves in the face with the wrench because they were actively pulling towards their body with the wrench. And in doing so, the majority of the times they would chip or knock out a tooth, which would bring it up to a recordable event, something that we want to dramatically reduce on our sites. As this was happening, I ended up getting frustrated. I was really confused why nobody was intervening. Why, when somebody would see someone else pulling a tool towards their face, someone of their peers did not come up to them and say, hey, that's not a good idea. And in my moment of frustration is when I realized maybe we weren't delivering it properly. Maybe it was our problem that these guys and gals out there were not intervening. And that's when I started to look at the language. And I belonged to a forum of instructors, so all I did with them was data mine them. I sent out the message, what does intervene or intervention mean to you? And what I was amazed at is the majority of them came back with a negative feedback to it. It meant to stop, to interfere, to get in the way. And with a lot of them, it also meant a rather crappy reality show. As soon as I realized that the word that was healthy for the safety environment was not a healthy word outside of our safety environment, was a moment I realized that we have to be really careful with the words that we use, as well as we have to understand the group that we're delivering it to. So now that we understand that there's these basic concepts that have to be in place, and that we can dramatically reduce the amount of time needed to deliver a message, let's look at a toolbox advisory example that we created. So the first thing that I created was something called a visual marketing page, because I realized out in a field work environment, there is no television, there's no big screen, there's nothing like an office where something can be brought up as a visual subconscious stimulus or reference point. So what this was a picture that would be handed out to the working crew so that they would have something to look at and something tangible to hold, and would also force them to be part of the interaction of the safety morning advisory because of the fact that they were waiting for this to come their way. It also dramatically reduced the people that were on an electronic device, and it engaged them. It had them wondering what this picture was. Why? Because it was a pink cow. And there's a pink cow every morning because there's a different picture coming to them every morning. We had a problem on the site with workers crossing a flagged and tagged barrier. So what that is that there's generally a taped off or roped off area that is tagged with the caution and the hazards that are inside, and either the workers have to read it and then pass, but generally they have to stop and talk to the workers that are inside the work area to pass that zone. Failure to do this on a lot of sites means you get fired. It is a steadfast rule. So to create the advisory to deal with this issue that was starting to percolate, I chose a picture of Gandalf with "You shall not pass." And the reason why I chose it is because it was actually a very emotional part to the movie. It was when Gandalf was fighting off this demon. And at the time, the movie was just released and it was very popular, so the majority of the people on the site had seen it. Now, this is exactly what was read by the safety advisor. Whether it is a yellow caution tape or red danger tape, "You shall not pass." If you need to cross the yellow caution tape, read the tag, talk to the workers controlling the area, and know the hazard before you cross by reading and signing their FLHA. Add flagged and tagged zones to your FLHA so that others coming into your work area can know what the hazard or danger is. Remember, you shall not pass. And just for clarification, FLHA is Field Level Hazard Assessment. In the industry, there's several different acronyms. PTP, pre-task plan. So whatever it is in your industry, just substitute it. So that entire advisory takes 30 seconds to read. And what we found is that not only did we dramatically reduce the time it took for an advisory to be delivered, it actually gave us great results. So before we did the testing of this new philosophy that I created, we went out in the field and we asked workers with a very strict guideline question whether they could recall the safety advisory that was given 2 days prior, and if they could, what was the advisory about. And we found that we actually had a less than 50% successful memory recall rate. Once we had achieved that baseline, we started to deliver the new safety advisories underneath this new set of philosophies. 2 days later, we went out in the field and asked the very same question. And we were shocked to find out we received a 82% memory recall rate. And we also saw a dramatic change happening out on the field. This started to appear and was hanging on the flagged and tagged areas right beside our official documentation. And I remember walking out on the field with my boss, and he saw the "You shall not pass" Gandalf tag hanging, and he looked at it, then he looked at me, and he was asking me what this was, because it's not approved documentation. And I looked at him and said, hey, the approved documentation is there. What we see there with that Gandalf tag is we created otakus. We had people giving us the advertising, and they were delivering the message for us. And not only that, it made us walk over to the cautioned off area and look at it because we saw the pink cow on a daily basis with over 4,000 workers on site. These set of principles took a 10 to 15 minute safety advisory to 30 seconds. It went from a less than 50% success rate to a more than 80% success rate and a dramatically reduced